Kaveh is an extremely niche character. Since I covered Baiju extensively the other day, and I concluded that he is a quite versatile character with some great uses, let me just say that Kaveh is the complete opposite. He doesn't have many good uses, but he specializes at one thing that he does pretty well. In this video I'll be covering his kit, best build options, constellations value, and possible team roles. By kit design, Kaveh is a 4-star character that specializes at magnifying normal Bloom's damage output and overall performance, so something similar to what Nilou does. By all means, Kaveh is a budget version of Nilou, as he can do what she does, but in a considerably worse way. In fact, through his burst, Kaveh increases Bloom's Rapture reaction bonus by 60% at talent level 13 for the whole team, and through his elemental skill he can make every seed on the floor explode. Note that the damage of the seeds that explode in this way will be calculated based on the elemental mastery of the character who created them in the first place, and not Kaveh's. This elemental skill has a 6 seconds cooldown, so by itself it's not a great tool to reduce the negative impact of the delayed explosion mechanic the seeds suffer from. In particular, in terms of real game usage, Kaveh will be forced to stay on field during the duration of his burst if he wants the bonuses to have effect, up to 12 seconds per rotation, which can become 14 or more if you account for some hit lag extension. During this window, Kaveh will be able to use his skill just 2 times, making it easy to see how that stacks up poorly to Nilou's abilities, which make all seeds explode instantaneously for 30 seconds after she used her elemental skill. Luckily, Kaveh benefits from some aspects that differentiate him from Nilou by a bit. Namely, while his elemental burst is active, all of his auto attacks get a Dendro infusion effect. Still, despite that, Kaveh's application is not in the realm of other top tier on-field Dendro appliers, such as Nahida and Alhaitham, for the simple reason that while he will be able to produce good application through his auto attacks, his elemental skill and burst stack up poorly if compared to other characters, as they both only apply Dendro once per usage. This makes his overall application on a single target just slightly better than Yao Yao's on a Bloom team, despite the latter having no auto-attacks application source. Other than that, Kaveh has some self-healing effects, which make him a strong tank for Bloom teams, so teams that can have serious HP issues due to the fact that the seed's explosion also partially hurts your characters. Kaveh solves this through self-heals that have a cooldown of 0.5 seconds and get procced if he takes Bloom damage. The heal base amount is equal to 3 times his elemental mastery. To contextualize how good this is, let's imagine that Kaveh has an elemental mastery focused build and can heal by around 3300 every 0.7 seconds on average. Since it will be unrealistic to assume every heal will proc exactly on cooldown in real game scenarios, throughout a rotation, Kaveh will be able to heal by 66,000 in total, which sounds massive, but make no mistake, he needs the entirety of it to survive. In fact, even if you just look at the Bloom damage he could take throughout a rotation in AoE situations, so let's say 40 Blooms, the amount of damage will be around 58,000 based on my calculations. Basically, he would heal more than the damage he'd receive, but considering he might also take damage from opponents since he's an on-fielder, 8,000 of heals per rotation for that kind of damage is not the safest thing. Luckily, constellations make this aspect better, but we'll get to this later. Other than the things I've explained, Kaveh doesn't have much else going for him, as his auto attacks, burst and skill aren't great damage tools. While he's not a total non-factor in that sense, he's probably one of the weakest characters in the game in terms of damage produced while on field in relation to the time spent for it. So that means he's a poor fit for teams that magnify Dendro damage, such as Quicken and Quick Bloom compositions. Now, talking about his constellations, Constellation 1 improves his healing aspect by a lot, as it reduces the damage taken by Blooms by 50% and gives him a 25% healing bonus. So, referencing the numbers I've shown earlier, his total healing per rotation would go up to 82,500, and the damage taken by Blooms would go down to 29,000. Basically, His Constellation 1 could very well be the difference between him being risky to play and him feeling completely immortal. Other than that, his Constellation 4 increases his own bloom reaction damage bonus by 60% during his burst, something that isn't actually that impactful since, assuming the amounts of blooms triggered by Kaveh per rotation is between 15 and 20%, this buff would only consist in a pitiful 2% team damage increase. His Constellation 6 is pretty good, but not essential for all teams, as it provides him of an additional way to preemptively make the seeds around him explode, and can trigger every 3 seconds when he hits opponents with any out attack. Realistically, this should make him instantaneously explode all seeds 3 to 4 additional times per rotation, making this constellation quite important for consistency reasons in Nilou-less bloom teams. Also, it seems that every Constellation 6 proc also applies Dendro on opponents. I will take this piece of info with a grain of salt, but if it's true, this would add 3 to 4 more application of Dendro per rotation and make him more comparable to the likes of Alhaitham in that case. Overall, his constellations are decent, but not particularly needed outside of his Constellation 1, and his Constellation 6 too if you plan to use him in a Nilou-less team. Speaking about his builds, let's start from the artifacts first. Since he has a 80 cost burst, he will need a lot of energy recharge even in double Dendro teams with Nahida, as his requirements are around 175% if there is a Favonius holder on the team and you use Shincho with a sacrificial sword. Alternatively, the requirements stay around 175% if you replace Shincho with another Favonius holder. Luckily, since he doesn't really need to focus on many stats in his build, that should be an easy amount to reach. Other than that, Elemental Mastery and other offensive stats are actually pretty similar in value even on bloom teams, since it will only presumably be able to trigger a low amount of blooms throughout a rotation. Actually, attack and crate should be slightly better for his build in single target situations, while big AoE situations favor Elemental Mastery, since in those scenarios his bloom triggers increase as well. Still, I suggest you to build Elemental Mastery on him, since that increases his healing capabilities too, and there is little difference in his damage either way. In terms of set choice, his best option should be the Instructor Artifact set if there is also somebody else on the team holding the Deepwood Artifact set. This set provides him of plenty of Elemental Mastery, and makes him a nice support for the team, as he should be able to maintain its buff for all allies for the whole rotation thanks to his on-field activity. Alternatively, any Elemental Mastery set is also an option. Weapons-wise, Mailed Flower is his main option, thanks to its very high Elemental Mastery value. Alternatively, among weapons that provide Elemental Mastery, Aquamarine can also be decent since it trades a bit of Elemental Mastery for some attack support for the rest of the team, which is nice if you use a Shincho with normal build on the team. Rain Slasher is also okay. On the energy recharge side of things, both Favonius and Sacrificial will allow you to replace an energy recharge Sans with an Elemental Mastery one, so they're both good options, also because they produce more energy for the rest of the team too. Team roles wise, regarding bloom teams, a key aspect is whether you want to use him with Nilou or not. In fact, something Kaveh is going for him over Nilou is the ability to use non-Dendro or Hydro units on his teams. This allows him to be used on Fridge teams, or teams with Onemo characters for additional grouping. However, I don't expect him to be a meaningful upgrade for these teams that are just terrible in single target situations and average in AoE situations at the moment. Even at Constellation 6, Kaveh just pales in comparison to Nilou, and below that, using him might even feel like a downgrade, as it basically minimizes the quick swap nature of the team for little advantages in terms of blooms explosions and reaction bonuses. Also, in most cases he will need to be used alongside another Dendro character for more consistent Dendro application on a team-wide scale and energy reasons. This leaves only 2 slots for non-Dendro units. In comparison, characters like Alhaitham and Nahida especially can be used in solo Dendro roles for this team, and that makes its structure more flexible than it will be with Kaveh. Overall, I wouldn't pull for Kaveh if what you want from him is to be an alternative to Nilou. On the other hand, arguments in his favor become stronger if he's seen as a Dendro driver for Nilou teams, since his team-wide reaction bonus effects apply for Bountiful cores as well. However, adding an on-field driver to a Nilou team means you won't be able to use Hydro drivers such as Kokomi and Barbara to full effect on the composition, meaning Kaveh doesn't synergize that well with them. So, alternatives like Xingqiu, Yedan and Ayato become no-brainers. In particular, Xingqiu in situations where there are few opponents, and Ayato against crowded stages should be the best in-slot Hydro options for Kaveh teams. In single-target situations, the Xingqiu variant of the team should feel better if compared to other traditional Nilou teams, at least from a theory crafting perspective, since a Constellation 6 Xingqiu can match and even surpass an on-field Kokomi application-wise, and Kaveh provides objective advantages for bloom damage on top of that. To contextualize Kaveh's reaction bonus buffs, he's adding 2 to 3 blooms worth of damage to the rotation. The comp should also feel quite durable despite having no dedicated healer, assuming your Kaveh is Constellation 1. Optimally, you would have to use Nahida in the final slot of the team, but characters like Yayao, Baiju, and Dendro main character can also fill that slot nicely in case you don't have the Archon. In AoE situations, things become more vague, as Kokomi specializes at that through her elemental skill application and charge attacks, but I would like to point out that Xingqiu's application isn't strictly single target either, as his Sword Circle will apply Hydro on all opponents that surround your active character closely, and his Rain Swords can hit multiple opponents too. Also, since Xingqiu's elemental burst is attached to your active character, it's more consistent in multi-wave situations, or against opponents that move around the room in general, as opposed to Kokomi's Jellyfish. In general, Kaveh will feel like a strong pick for the Dendro slot on Nilou teams, but it's worth noting that depending on the situation, he might not feel optimal. In fact, there might be situations that favor quick swap lineups, like the current Abyss Nightmare, the Sitek Winat, and in those cases, characters like Collie or Yayao just become better picks for the team. Overall, my prediction is that Kaveh teams will be the best choice for single-target situations that don't have obstacles for teams with a static on-fielder structure, and possibly low AoE situations too. In other scenarios, other Nilou variants might feel better. Other than Bloom, as I said earlier, his raw damage is quite poor, so his fit on Quicken and Quick Bloom teams is not the best. Hyper Bloom and Burgeon teams make a bit more sense, but since his application is not on Nahida and Alhaitham level, he will be more of an alternative in that sense. He should still allow for the creation of around 16 to 17 seeds per rotation at most, which isn't bad, so if you want to use him in that role, you should still be able to clear a base, but mostly thanks to how strong these teams are as a baseline. Overall, Kaveh is pretty limited in terms of what he can do, but at least he has a defined role and a coherent kit. Most 4-star nowadays don't really revolutionize pre-existent team structures, and Kaveh is the same, but it should prove to be a nice and low-cost option for Nilou teams if you decide to pull for him. I'm done for today. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe. See you next time!